What is up, people? It is Monday, September 6th, 2021. A relatively substantial day in my life for some personal reasons. But for the average person out there, it's probably just an ordinary Monday for y'all. Anyway, you are currently tuned into the Five Starr Wrestling Report podcast. And if you are watching the show for the first time, what's going on? Glad you stopped in. The FSWR podcast is a wrestling show delivering 2 podcast episodes each week of a Friday edition where we talk about NXT and AEW Dynamite, and a Monday edition covering AEW Rampage, NWA Powerrr, and any weekend event / wrestling show / wrestling bulletins. If you're watching the show for the first time and you have not done so already, make sure you subscribe, click the bell icon. It's really important there to stay notified for all future FSWR posts on this YouTubes. Make sure you rate this video with a like, and do me a favor and help me out in the algorithms here by simply leaving a comment down below. Comment. That is what I will continually preach as I produce content on this channel. Whatever's on your mind, whether it's AEW or WWE related, whether it's general wrestling comments, doesn't matter to me. Comments are what really drives viewership increase and recognition today. So I would greatly appreciate all you can do to help me out here and just get this podcast show out for more wrestling fans. You know, I know the common cliche now is everybody does podcasts in 2021, but the way I see it, the more wrestling fans out there that are talking about this stuff, the better. In addition to YouTube, make sure you guys check out my Rumble page. The link to that is in the description below, or you can go to the little logo on my profile page and it'll take you right over to it. Also, I am writing articles and opinion pieces over at the Chairshot.com if you're looking for some fun reads throughout the week. I do 4 articles each week. Topics range on a variety of companies and issues, and generally shorter reads between 600 and 1,000 words, so you don't need to feel like you're reading a novel. If it's something you're interested in, something you're trying to do to pass time, I'll be sure to always leave my most recent publications in the link below so that you can click on that and it'll take you right over to the website for your viewing pleasure. Today, we are going to be going over AEW Rampage and NWA Powerrr from this previous week. And then to close out the show, I'm going to recap the All Out pay-per-view from last night, which I just finished watching about an hour ago, and I had to catch up on delay. So most of it's still fresh in my mind. But that is the main event of this episode this week. Gotta build up to that one. So without further ado, let's get into the material, because I want to make sure I respect your time by not dragging out the show longer than you have hours in the day. So we'll begin with AEW Rampage from September 3rd, 2021. We begin with Malachi Black versus Lee Johnson. I did get a momentary chuckle out of this horrifically bad 4-man commentary team this week. If you've watched the show before and you've been keeping up with my recaps over the last few weeks, I have pretty much been on record saying that I hate the 4-man booth, but obviously they aren't going to change it now, so I guess I got to swallow my pride and take it. But here's the reason that I got to laugh out of this. So Black's got this really sick AEW entrance, and most of the time the commentators are usually just silent during his entrance just to kind of let the spectacle speak for itself. So there's like all this mystique to Black's entrance, and then Mark Henry just subtly goes, "That entrance creeps me out." God damn it, Mark. So I didn't like the booking of this at all. First of all, this shit went through a commercial break. Why? Like, why is Black not decimating this guy in less than a minute with his finisher? There's no reason that we needed to see 8 minutes of Lee Johnson and Malachi Black chain wrestling. I don't care how significant or how good people think Lee Johnson is. You're trying to get over Black as a monster heel with this gimmick. He's the bigger star. He's the bigger deal. He's what should be the sole focus of getting over in this segment. Lee Johnson is a jobber, plain and simple. But him going toe-to-toe with Malachi Black here, especially after watching him smash Cody in his debut match in like 5 minutes, like, this just made Black look weak by comparison. The stuff at the end with the chair and Black goading Lee into grabbing it, but then Black kicks his head off with the black mass and pins him, that was good. I like that part. My God, watching him and Lee do mat wrestling and exchanging holds and Black selling for Lee's offense, dude, fuck that. Black should not be long-term selling for anyone at this point, especially not jobby Lee Johnson of all people. Anyway, they did have Dustin come down to run off Black afterwards, and we got the announcement later in the program that they're going to be doing Malachi and Dustin on, I believe, Dynamite this coming Wednesday. Kind of wish they would have just scrapped what ended up being a massive dumpster fire in that women's casino battle royal, which I'll talk about a little later on, but I would have preferred that they just put this match on the All Out pay-per-view, but, you don't want to trigger all the feminists, so you win some, you lose some, right? We had a Miro Eddie Kingston promo deal in the ring. Miro talked about worshiping God, trash talk Kingston for a while. I think he called him John Moxley's bag boy at one point. And then Eddie came out and pretty much did exactly what Eddie excels at the best in this company, cutting promos. And he ran down Miro for a minute, eventually charged him in the ring. They get into a brawl. Miro lays out Eddie with the belt shot, and then they get back in the ring. Eddie gives Miro a back fist and DDTs him. Little too much overbooking with the brawl for my money. I thought they should have just cut it off after Miro gave Eddie the headshot with the belt. No reason for them to keep fighting after that, especially when Eddie was just going to get back on his feet in under a minute after taking a belt shot to the head. If the idea was Eddie's not winning on Sunday, so you needed to give him something to give him some credibility, okay, maybe, but I don't know. Because at least with doing it the way that I said, you can get the heat shot with Miro and just have Eddie run down, tackle Miro. Miro tries to grab the title to hit Eddie, and then Eddie backfists Miro and lays him out. That way you don't kill Miro's heat right before the pay-per-view. Is it a nitpick? Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it probably is. But the way I see it, AEW does have an issue when it comes to overbooking and overcomplicating their segments, as you'll probably hear about when I talk about the All Out show. So, I don't know. Maybe some insight from a dweeb on the internet would convince them to keep things simpler. Of course, we see how that usually turns out. Rebel and Jamie Hayter versus Chris Statlander. Yeah, let me try that again. Rebel and Jamie Hayter versus Chris Statlander in a handicap match. I'll say this, because I know I'm an asshole, but I also am a fair asshole. Statlander looked pretty impressive here. That spot where she had Rebel up in the electric chair on her shoulders and simultaneously held Jamie in a front power slam position. Christ, I've hardly seen guys with feats of strength that remarkable. Yeah, albeit it wasn't much of a match, and you had fucking Rebel in there, and if any of you remember that match she had in TNA years ago, you're probably skeptical about her work to begin with. But you're trying to build intrigue for the Britt Baker title match. Chris Statlander plows through her two lackeys in relatively short order. She looks strong going into the pay-per-view. It's an effective way to build up your babyface challenger, so that was good. That wasn't until the Afterbirth, where Britt's crew tries to jump Statlander, and then you had Red Velvet run out and completely ruin everything. And don't take my word for it. Just ask the crowd. Because, yeah, they were none too kind to this Miss Little Red on this program. They did take a minute to run down the card for the show on Sunday. A couple other big upcoming matches, too, they have booked for TV. The only two notable ones that I wrote down were the Malachi Black Dustin Rhodes match for Dynamite and the Pac Andrade match, which I think is going to happen on next week's Rampage. Like I said, shame it couldn't happen on the pay-per-view, but it is what it is at this point. They also showed brief footage of Jon Moxley and that Satoshi Kojima dude fake fighting to hype their match. And I still had absolutely no idea why Moxley is wrestling Kojima or why I should care at the time. The answer to the first one, practically speaking, is because they couldn't get Hiroshi Tanahashi. Right. And you're telling me that out of a roster of 1,272 guys you have under contract, you can't find one of these schmucks to wrestle Moxley at the pay-per-view? Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs, Brian Pillman Jr., Wardlow. No? None of these guys good enough, apparently. Good thing they're under contract, then. We had the weekly cringeworthy Mark Henry split screen interview. This time it was Sting, Darby 2.0, and Daniel Garcia. And of course, the only one of these dudes that can cut a semi-decent promo is the one that didn't say a word here, that guy being Sting. And God bless Mark. Dude, I'm sure he's trying real hard to make this interviewing deal work. He's not really good at it. Anyway, the main event for this show was Darby Allen versus Daniel Garcia. Did we not see this match already? Could have sworn I saw this on Dynamite a couple weeks back. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Anyway, the match was solid for the most part, other than the one spot that I'll briefly talk about here. So, Darby and Garcia are on the outside, and Garcia's leaned up against a table by the barricade. And I have no idea what this idiot was thinking, but Darby charges Garcia full speed into this table and just flies ass over tea kettle onto the concrete. And of course, to make it even funnier, the table ends up tumbling over on top of Darby in the process. If this doesn't make the next Botchamania, I'll be shocked. And here's the incredible thing. I watched this happen live, and I completely no-sold it. I saw Darby take this ridiculously stupid bump 2 days before he's scheduled to wrestle arguably the most important match for AEW this year. And I barely blinked. I was like, oh, yeah, of course this moron took a completely gratuitous bump that could have severely injured him before he's wrestling the biggest match of his career. Why wouldn't he? So aside from that, like I said, match was fine. I don't know a whole lot about Garcia, but they have been prominently featuring him lately, and every time I see him, he looks pretty good. His stuff is crisp. He doesn't flip and flop like a goddamn fish to get over. He just competently wrestles. A novel concept these days. We did get an eye-rolling moment from Excalibur here where Darby hits some kind of clothesline spot, and of course, Excalibur's marking out with the commentary like, it's the Pepsi twist! I guess it was one of Punk's old moves in Ring of Honor back in the day. But of course, it's one of those deals where Excalibur and 8 other people on the planet Earth know what the fuck he's talking about. So, you hear him going crazy for this move, and I'm sitting there like, dude, it was a fucking clothesline. Chill out. The other thing I got a kick out was the stuff that actually happened before the match. And if you didn't see this, you got to try to find a way to check it out because it was pretty funny. So Punk did another one of those crowd surf deals. And, by that I mean he just leaps into the front row of the crowd. It's really not that much. But anyway, everyone's, creaming themselves with excitement. Most of them probably getting more out of this than your average BJ, let's be honest. And Punk goes to jump back over the rail, and the guy to his right offers him a beer. And you have never seen a man so disgusted in his life. Punk looks at this schlub and goes, "You fucking kidding me, dude? Get out of here." Anyway, Darby ended up going over with some kind of cradle pin. And then afterwards, they do the beatdown deal. Punk takes a minute to evaluate the situation before running down to make the save for Darby. He stalks the 2.0 guys around ringside, and then Darby ends up charging them and taking him out with a suicide dive, and him and Punk stare each other down to close out the show. So that was the, well, I guess technically speaking, it was the real go-home show to All Out. Even though Dynamite is the premiere show, Rampage, I guess, was the last TV show before the actual pay-per-view, so I guess I get the argument that this was the real go-home show. Anyway, who cares? It doesn't matter. Effective show, I say it was a lot better than what they did on Dynamite. Good show, hit and miss, but generally I'd say it was fine. Again, it's all the difference between 1 hour versus 2 hours. When things are compacted into 60 minutes, the company's really pressured to limit the content they produce. It kind of forces AEW to manage their time well and only feature the things that matter the most. So even if I wasn't a fan of everything they didn't have a bunch of filler crap. And I think at the end of the day, that'll always be the big difference between what I see on Dynamite versus Rampage. I'll talk about the All Out show at the end here, but for now I'm going to move on to NWA Powerrr from August 31st. And it was the first NWA Powerrr show that I've watched since, well, whenever the last NWA podcast show I did was. About 2 years at this point, I think. And, well, things have definitely changed, that's for sure. And based on my viewing experience after this show, I don't necessarily know if those changes are for the better, but we'll get into that. So they were taping the show from the Chase Park Plaza in St. Louis, which was the same location for the NWA Powerrr and 73 events from last week. Not quite the studio feel, but it definitely had its moments. We had Camille and Tom Latimer out with Kyle Davis for a promo. Camille sort of recapped her matches last weekend and ranted about Billy Corgan being out to screw her or something of the sort. Really wasn't a good promo, if I'm being frank. Had a great moment in here, though, where Camille's talking about people having the gall to boo her husband, and someone in the crowd goes, "'Cause he sucks." Had a good laugh at that. And then Tom Latimer chimed in with some stuff. I don't know. It was weird. So they just kind of leave. And Trevor Murdoch comes out and delivered arguably the second greatest promo of the year 2021, excluding Punk's Rampage promo. But even by comparison, they were pretty on par with one another, at least in terms of delivery. So he puts over all this and his 3-year success as NWA World Champion, says he earned Murdoch's respect after their match last weekend, and whether he likes it or not, NWA needs all this because he is good for business. Says he hopes one day that they can meet face to face again and hash things out, work their issues out, and try to bury the hatchet for good. And he concludes by saying that he knows one day someone's going to come along to beat him for the belt, but until that day comes, Murdoch's going to keep fighting. He's going to be a good champion. He's going to carry the legacy of his mentor, Harley Race, forward. And boy, was this fantastic. Trevor Murdoch in 2 shows has somehow become one of my favorite wrestlers of the year 2021. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'll tell you what, no bullshit here. I listened to this promo in full, and Trevor was passionate. He was genuine. Nothing he said felt forced or scripted. I'll tell you what, after watching years of WWE where, people are essentially trained to be robots and deliver verbatim content that's written down on a sheet of paper, saying things that no one in their right fucking mind would say in a normal day-to-day conversation. To hear a promo like this on a wrestling show in 2021, and it's a breath of fresh air, I'll say that. So good on Trevor. And unfortunately, nothing else on this show followed this, be it promos or matches. We had Pope, Colby Carino, and Jax Dane out for a promo next. And again, I hadn't watched NWA content before the two events last weekend, so wasn't exactly sure what was going on here. Something about these guys winning some kind of NWA Champion Series, and I guess they're all gunning for gold at some point. I had another great moment in this segment where Colby asks what he thinks is going to happen when he gets his shot at championship gold, and one single person in the crowd just goes, "Nothing, because you suck and you're going to lose." Dude, I fucking miss the studio crowd. Makes for some great television moments. But, yeah, kind of lost me here, so I tuned it out. Kiera Hogan versus Sky Blue. A little bit of sloppiness here and there, especially when they were exchanging pin roll-ups. Both girls look pretty green, but you could definitely tell Kiera had a little more ring experience. And she ended up going over and confronted Mickey at the commentary booth, so I guess they're going to feud. Cool. And I think, unless I'm mistaken here, I think Sky Blue actually made an appearance in that Casino Battle Royal at the All Out show, so interesting. We had some ear-splitting and extraordinarily turn-the-channel heat stuff with Taryn Terrell and her crew and Marty Bell and Allison Kay. I talked about how I had to skip through the Taryn promo at the Empower show just because of how ear-piercingly impossible she was to listen to. At least in that circumstance, her promo didn't drag on for an extended period of time. I have no idea what these clowns were thinking in post-production, but they actually had the gall to have Taryn out there doing this ditzy, blonde, bad schoolgirl comedy for what seemingly felt like 8 hours. And I don't know what they were arguing about. All I know is that I could not withstand 30 seconds of this, so I skipped ahead. Have a feeling I'll be doing a lot more of that with Taryn's content on this show going forward. They ran down a list of dudes that are going to be in this tag tournament series to find number one contenders, and I had not a single clue who anyone was. They didn't show a video or anything either, so it's not like I had any context. We had Chris Adonis and Melina come out to talk. Apparently, Melina and Adonis are aligned together, and this was a shock to everybody on the program, so they weren't aligned beforehand? Huh. Well, maybe it would help to have them explain why they were together here then. Of course, they didn't do that. Although Melina did call out Camille to task, saying that she liked it better when she was a mute. Agreed. Anyway, this brought out Father James Mitchell to do a deal with that Judas guy. And apparently they're going to do some kind of heel versus heel program for the national heavyweight title. Okay. The Rude Dudes versus the Ill Begotten. The Rude Dudes, aka the Smooth Dudes with Smooth Moves. And I guess the Ill Begotten are pure gimmicks. Holy shit, this was terrible. I mean, even Tim Storm was on commentary talking about how he has no idea how these teams formed or why they're friends or how these teams got booked in a tournament for the tag belts. I mean, of course, having not watched NWA in 2 years, I had no idea who these fucking four goofballs were. Only thing that would have completely put this over the top is having Jimmy Valiant out there to manage one of these teams. He actually probably could have pulled this segment off. I don't even remember who went over here. Did I write it down? Oh, yeah. The Rude Dudes went over here. Yeah, Rude Dudes with bad moves. going to start calling them that. Apparently, they're advancing in this mystery tournament for, again, I have no idea who any of the participants are, and they never showed any brackets or anything, so no idea who's in it, or, quite frankly, why I should care either way. I think Joe Galley actually summed up the show pretty well at the booth. Nothing makes sense. Hey, he said it, not me. And if we're being blunt, I don't disagree. Chelsea Green versus Kenzie Page. They wrestled for a few minutes. It was bad. Yeah, that's me being nice. And then Kenzie rolled up Chelsea to pin her, and Chelsea snapped. I mean, Velvet seemed to know what the fuck was going on here, but I sure didn't. She threw a fit in the ring. She smeared mascara all over her face and grabbed her trophy off the commentary table and screamed into the camera like a banshee. I have no clue. Apparently my prophecy came true, though, based on my proposed question to Mickey coming out of the Empower pay-per-view. They really are going to try and 50-50 the content with men and women on this show going forward. I mean, if I had any indication to believe that the content with the females is going to be good going forward, I would be all for it. Fuck, at this point, I just wanted to see some good wrestling shows for some organization out there. But I'm not going to lie, the women were kind of the low point of the show this week. And especially if you're going to sit there and try to tell me that I have to listen to Terrence Screech promos every week on this show in order to get more screen time for the women. No, I'll pass. Or, moreover, I'll just skip it entirely. And, hey, maybe that'll be a benefit on my end. I can get through these shows a lot quicker. Tyrus wrestled some dude named Black G's for the TV title. Who? Well, anyway, Tyrus killed him in like 2 minutes. And, well, then the show just kind of ended. What? Yeah, that was the main event of the show this week. Could have fooled me, bro. What a lame finish. Well, I'll tell you what. Talk about me complaining about AEW having too much filler. I don't think there was anything on this show, excluding the Trevor Murdoch promo, that I would not consider filler. Like, seriously, what the fuck was that? I mean, I know NWA had its share of goofy material a couple years ago, but nothing like the stuff I saw on this show. I mean, after that Trevor Murdoch promo at the very beginning, this show tanked faster than Joe Biden's approval ratings in the last week. I don't even know how you grade this show. I mean, like I said, I know the roster's been pretty gutted over the last couple years, especially losing talents like Eli Drake and Ricky Starks and Thunder Rosa, just to name a few. But, man, parts of the show, I feel like I was watching some kind of low-rent indie fed. I don't know. That was kind of underwhelming for a return viewing experience. I'll give the show another shot, maybe try to ride it out through the month and see if things pick up, but I mean, I don't want my enjoyment of this program to be solely dependent on Trevor Murdoch going forward. But especially after that Ric Flair promo and that Murdoch All This main event at the 73 show last weekend, this show is a popcorn fart. All right, I'm going to close things out by running down this All Out show from AEW from Sunday night. Or as my fellow Pittsburgh fans out there might say, yeah, you just getting down the All Out show and that. Skipped over the buy-in deal because ain't nobody got time for that. Plus the match involved Orange Cassidy, so I presume there were shenanigans at play there. So the first actual match that I watched was the Eddie Kingston Miro TNT Championship match. Eddie, of course, sporting his new Redeem These Nuts t-shirt from his epic promo on Rampage. Sick. Boy, was this a slugfest. Or a good old-fashioned slobber knocker, as someone famous once said. I thought the guys did a fine job here. It kept things basic. Miro worked over Kingston's back. Kingston got a couple hope spots in here and there to keep the crowd on their feet, but they made sure that not to go completely over the top with false finishes early on. They eventually built up to the spot where one of the turnbuckle pads gets ripped off, and later on Miro eventually grabs it in a feat of rage after not being able to put Eddie away, but he ends up throwing it aside. So the ref goes to pick it up and try to reattach it in the corner, which is one of the lamest wrestling tropes I've ever seen, but I'm just nitpicking there. But then of all things in this match, we get what? A Bryce Remsburg heel turn. Miro whips the turnbuckle pad on the mat. Remsburg goes to reattach it in the corner, and while he's distracted doing this, Eddie hits Miro with his DDT, and, well, suffice to say, fans were pretty pissed about that false finish. Actually, I think Remsburg got more heat in this match than Miro did just for that one spot alone. And in the actual finish, they do the heel ref trap in the corner so that Miro can kick Eddie in the groin, give him a couple super kicks to the head, and Miro pins Eddie to retain. I thought it was a good opener. It definitely felt like a old school NWA championship match. They did a good job telling the story of Miro working over Kingston's back. They didn't do anything embarrassing or ludicrously stupid. Miro's chest had a nice solid handprint on it. Possibly a couple broken blood vessels too. But yeah, no complaints. Good stuff. Satoshi Kojima versus Jon Moxley. So, I actually do have a legit question. No bullshit here. It looks like Justin Roberts has drastically toned down his ridiculously over-the-top Moxley introduction recently. Did someone from management direct him to do that, or is he just getting a lot of flack for it from people, so he just kind of decided to tone it down? Regardless, I approve of this. Anyway, well, we'll talk about what happened afterwards here in a minute, but I won't lie, I didn't like the match. Not just because I didn't really care about Satoshi Kojima, but the match was just really wacky. And not even like the good kind of wacky. Like, it had some New Japan elements that I like, but it also had a lot of New Japan elements that I hate, and a lot of things in this match that really just make it hard for me to get into that product in general. Like the back and forth, no-selling forearm shots, the no-selling standing clothesline spots. It wasn't bad or anything. I just didn't have any investment in it either way. I know this match probably wasn't their first option. I think, like I said before, they initially wanted to do Moxley and Tanahashi, but for whatever reason, that match didn't come to pass. My complaint with it was always the fact that I just thought it was just a waste of a match for Moxley. They got way too many people under contract right now that they could really be using to spotlight here. So, I didn't like that. But afterwards, fucking Minoru Suzuki comes out, and I mean, it was an awesome moment, but then I asked this question immediately following it. Why was this match not booked for the All Out show? Like, if they had Suzuki at the show anyway, and they were planning on using him here, why are we wasting a Jon Moxley match on Satoshi Kojima when you could have just done Moxley and Suzuki here? Made no sense to me. At least they could have defended them doing the inter-promotional deal if they were going to, have Moxley face someone from New Japan that people actually gave a shit about. No offense to Kojima. Anyway, subpar match, but a cool afterbirth. I will say, I would have just rather seen Suzuki choke out Moxley and hit him with the Gotch pile driver instead of the stupid fake-looking forearm shots they exchanged before, but I'll give him a pass here because the confrontation was cool. I saw this match sometime last year. I remember it was like right before the Bug deal, and I really enjoyed it. Apparently they're going to do this match on Dynamite in Cincinnati, which is fine, I guess. I mean, I probably would have built it up for pay-per-view, but what do I know? I'm not a promoter thinking of probable ways this company could generate some pay-per-view revenue and ticket sales. Just a geek that watches the show and bitches about it. Chris Statlander and Dr. Britt Baker for the AEW Women's title. Man, I tried really hard to get into this thing. I just couldn't. Nothing they did was horrible or anything. And there was that stupid spot where Statlander grabbed Britt's finger and did that boop thing with her nose, and I don't really need to talk anymore about that. But aside from that dumb spot, I don't know, it just kind of felt dull. Part of the problem was that there wasn't really any heat spot. It was mostly just kind of back and forth action, and some of it was good, some of it was bad. Statlander has her moments where she can be really impressive. She's really strong, and she can pull off a lot of power moves. The problem is that her offense looks really sloppy a lot of the time. So, even if she does amazing things like lifting up Baker into an electric chair position from the ground, she kind of stumbles around, loses her grip momentarily, and, while she executes the move, it's not smooth. So, I'm sitting there, I'm not going, wow. I'm sitting there going, oh, thank God she didn't drop her on her head. I will say outright, the finishing sequence was too much for me. They did this exact same thing when Britt Baker beat Sheeta for the title, and like the last 2 minutes, they started doing like 15 false finishes. The kickouts were ridiculous. They just completely started no-selling. Transitions were way too quick in succession. It really just kind of killed the match. Exact same thing happened here. Britt hits a Canadian Destroyer. Statlander kicks out. Then she immediately follows up with a curb stomp. Statlander kicks out. And then she proceeds to hit the lockjaw for the ref stoppage. Was all that shit necessary? I'll save you the breath. The answer is no. If you're going to do a false finish, have Britt hit the stomp, have Statlander roll out, then have Britt throw a tantrum, maybe do a couple stiff kicks to Statlander's neck, and then have her put her in the lockjaw for the ref stoppage. This match was not important enough to justify multiple false finishes, especially when no one thought for a second that Statlander was actually winning the title here. Moving along here, we got whatever the fuck you call this cage match deal with the Lucha Bros and the Bucks. I said on my recent AEW reports that in a sadistic kind of way, I was actually kind of looking forward to this match, mostly just to see how preposterous it would get. And, well, they did not disappoint. I will tell you what. Yeah, serving up flip-flop fish sticks. Yeah, see? Yeah. Look. I hate the Bucks' style of wrestling. I'm on record saying it. I will never understand how people think that their ring work is anything other than overly choreographed acrobatic tumbling. It's not my flavor. It's never been my flavor. It'll never be my flavor. I can say that I remember watching these two teams in that ladder match a couple years ago, and I think at the time I rated it as like one of my favorite matches of the year or something like that. And maybe in my head I tried to justify it. Maybe because, it was during a time where I really tried to give AEW the benefit of the doubt because, they were just starting out. They were trying to find their footing. I don't really know. I'm sure if I rewatched the match again, I'd have a completely different perspective. But I've seen so many Lucha Bros and Bucks matches in AEW over the last 2 years. And I feel like every time I see them, my patience and my interest just diminishes with each passing match. I understand that this match is going to appeal to a lot of fans. I understand people are going to rave about this match and call it match of the year, blah, blah, blah. If you do, fine. Your prerogative doesn't affect my life one way or the other. all I will say is that if you think that this is how modern professional wrestling should be portrayed in 2021, might I suggest a little bit of territorial watch, read the literature, read the history, check the data, and learn about what actually made professional wrestling money back in the day. That's all I'm going to say about it. So, the match. There's a lot of moves, a lot of overly scripted and planned out material and spots, a lot of no-selling, pretty much the stereotypical Lucha Bros Young Bucks match you've become accustomed to seeing today. Just more false finishes. By the way, have I ever mentioned how much I hate that fucking Meltzer driver move? Especially with the spot they did here. So, like, this spot above all else just really set me over the edge here. I mean, I know of all the spots they did in this match that were completely ludicrous. No, this was the one that really put things over the top for me. So Phoenix is laying in dead man's position, and Matt picks up Penta in the tombstone position. And, of course, it's a Young Bucks move, so they have to take like 15 minutes to set it up. So the idea is that when Nick does the assist with the pile driver, Penta is supposed to go headfirst onto Phoenix's stomach. All the while, Nick's taking like 15 minutes to balance himself on the top rope, and Matt just has to stand there holding Penta upside down while Phoenix lays prone on the ground. And I'm just thinking, dude, just fucking roll over to the side. It's not that hard. But they did the move anyway, and looked dumb regardless. So they eventually do the deal with Brandon Cutler running down with the messenger bag, tosses it into the cage to the Bucks, and then Matt grabs the Jordan shoe, and it's got tacks on the bottom of it. So they're building up the drama for when Matt decides he's going to kick someone in the head with it. And of course, they get to the spot where Phoenix is on his knees. Matt's going to kick him in the head, but Penta puts himself in harm's way to take the bullet. Matt kicks Penta in the face with it. They do some more stuff. They eventually hit the double knee on Penta. You think they're going to go home and quit while they're ahead. And Phoenix breaks it up. And the match kept going. And going. And going. And going. Then Phoenix starts doing a bunch of stuff. And he ends up using the shoe, so you figure, okay, perfect. Faces make the comeback, they use the gimmick on the heels. Perfect way to end the match. Wrong. Nope. Bucks kick out. Match keeps going. And they keep doing stuff, Penta kills Matt with a Canadian Destroyer from the top rope. Said it before, never need to see that fucking move again. Of course it's not the finish. Gotta get your shit in. And eventually this leads to some ridiculously ludicrous super kick exchanges. And actually Excalibur summed it up perfectly here, where he goes, "If you are watching for the first time, welcome to All Elite Wrestling." And I said, 100% agreed, sir. And that is why this company will never be taken seriously by any mainstream audience. So finally, after all this bullshit, Phoenix does a crossbody off the top of the cage. He completely no-sells the dive after landing on the ring mat. And then him and Penta hit whatever that finishing package DDT move is. And they win the titles. Okay, look. I try not to get mad anymore watching wrestling. Mostly because it's really not worth my energy and effort anymore. I understand that we've been sort of coerced as a culture to believe that the acro stunt, gravity-defying circus shows are what modern wrestling matches should be. I didn't grow up watching this stuff. And, while I'll admit there was a lot of stuff that I grew up watching that, maybe looking back in hindsight now was probably crap by comparison, you sure as hell we're never going to see matches like this, even when WCW was introducing cruiserweight wrestling on a mainstream level. I mean, albeit most of the time I just love watching that stuff to watch guys like Hoovy and Psychosis and all those other masked dudes fuck up moves left and right. And I used to get a good laugh out of it. But like, this modern day gymnastic stunt spot fest things that they're trying to pass off as great professional wrestling, it's just absurd. And honestly, it's in a lot of cases why it's kind of tuned me out from the indie circuit. Because, several years ago, I at least tried to watch some independent wrestling, tried to see what was out there, tried to get a general idea of what talent was maybe eventually going to be developed and brought up. But, this is just basically what indie wrestling is now. Every show's the same. So, I don't get it. I've never gotten it. Quite frankly, I don't think I ever will. So, you like this match? Good for you. I thought it was shit. So then we follow this with the Women's Casino Battle Royal, which was originally supposed to be on the pre-show, but because of the PAC travel issues, they ended up bumping this to the main card. So, fuck you very much for that, Mr. PAC. I incrementally glanced at this match from time to time. Guess you could say I moderately observed the action. The first 5 minutes was easy enough for me to take a break, heat up my coffee, and take a piss, because the first series of entries included names like The Bunny and Abaddon, and as soon as I saw Abaddon come out, I immediately said, nope, and I walked right out. So I came back a few minutes later from my intermittent glance, and I just saw some girls brawling, and poorly, by the way. I did see Sheeta get dumped unceremoniously. Remember when AEW forced her down our throats for God knows how long as the champion? No, apparently she's just another girl on the roster now. Thanks for coming, Sheeta. Nice haircut, by the way. Kind of like that. So the next suit had Thunder Rosa in it, so I was moderately interested. But it also had chicks like Riho and Big Swole, so it didn't take long for me to tune out again. Obviously, the only part of the match that anyone gave a crap about, let's be honest, was whoever was going to be the wild card entry. And, it really wasn't a shock when it occurred. Most people presumed it would be Ruby Riott, and that's who it was. I'm sorry, Ruby Soho. Because, of course, every former WWE star that comes in now has to be extensions of their former names from the company, just to remind us, WWE fucked up with these guys, but now that we have them under contract, we'll be sure we feature them like they matter. Right. Ruby Soho. So? No. It's Ruby Soho. So? All right, I'm sorry. I thought they should just call her Ruby Rojo. Rojo, Spanish for red. Get it? We'll see how long it takes for me to start calling her Ruby So-So. Because Lord knows her WWE run was so-so. Just a matter of how long it takes before the same thing happens here in All Elite Wrestling. Can you tell I was over the show by this point? Anyway, skipping ahead to the end here. Thank Christ. The match boiled down to a final three of Thunder Rosa, Nyla Rose, and Ruby Soho. So we had a Rose, we had a Rosa, and we had another wrestler associated with the color red. Funny. So Nyla ended up getting dumped, which is a crowd pop pretty big for. And then Rosa and Ruby proceeded to have a relatively fun exchange for a few minutes. They fought on the apron, went back and forth with some strikes. Rosa ended up getting shoved into the post. Ruby hit her with some kind of kick, and Rosa fell off the apron for the elimination. Tell you what they should have done instead. They should have just scrapped the first 15 minutes of this snooze fest and just have Rosa and Ruby wrestle a damn singles match. Guaranteed it would have been a whole lot better than the bore fest we got in this gauntlet. But you gotta feature all the talent you have under contract that's not over. But I guess Ruby's getting a title shot now. Gil. MJF versus Chris Jericho, where if Jericho loses, he will never wrestle in AEW again. MJF trolling with the old Y2J entrance. What a dick. But the real highlight of the show, let's talk about that. Jericho's entrance. What were they thinking with that guitar solo rendition of Judas? Genuine question. Did they... I'm not even trying to be an asshole about this. I'm just upfront asking. Did they actually expect fans were going to be able to sing along with the reverb and the sound echoing in the building? You actually thought you were going to pull that off? If you didn't see this live, you got to try to find a replay or something. Or better yet, just wait for it to come out on Botchamania. This tanked like a motherfucker, let me tell you. And you can even tell Jericho was pretty dissatisfied with it, because he's listening to this and he just goes, yeah, that did not work. So pretending that little debacle never happened, the match was... it's fine. Maybe at most pretty good. I will say this. MJF does a much better Fargo strut than Jeff Jarrett ever did in the thousands of matches I ever saw him work back in the day. In fact, pretty much anyone that ever did some rendition of the strut did it better than Double J. But I don't know. I had trouble figuring out whether or not I liked this. I'll get into the finish in a bit, but as far as the action goes, I don't know. Nothing they did was bad. It was a competent match. A lot of it was just kind of blah. The weird thing too is that for 75% of it, MJF was selling his lower back. And why? I'm not saying he did a poor job. He did a great job selling, actually, but he's supposed to be the heel. It's instead of me sitting there waiting for a big Jericho comeback, instead I'm watching MJF play valiant fighter in peril, and he's trying to work through a kayfabe back injury. All the while, Jericho's just sort of doing his usual stuff. I will say my only real complaint about the match was that spot where MJF attempted the springboard flip to the outside. MJF usually works like a traditional heel in his matches. And I know he's capable of doing some of these flippy moves, but in what world would MJF need to ever do a springboard for any reason unless he's a babyface? It'll be a cold day in hell before MJF, of all people, turns babyface in this company. The other thing I didn't like was the Wardlow-Jake Hager fight. First of all, the punches looked like shit. And second of all, if this were real, hear me out, you're telling me that Hager was just conveniently waiting by the entrance tunnel for this attempted run-in? At least if you're going to have someone make the save, let Wardlow try to run in interference for a minute before you have a babyface come out for the save. That's just common sense booking. Common sense booking in AEW, give me a break. So anyway, we get to this finish, and had they not overcomplicated it, had they just gone with the initial finish they did, would have been fantastic. They do the shenanigans with Wardlow. MJF hits Jericho with the bat. He gives Jericho the Judas effect. He pins Jericho with Aubrey not catching his foot underneath the ropes. Great. Perfect. MJF gets the cheap win. Jericho keeps his sympathy. Aubrey makes a bad call, but you can use this as a storyline way to write Jericho off. You move MJF onto higher level programs. You essentially blow the feud off with Jericho taking the Triple H Batista route, with Hunter just putting Batista over in consecutive matches and really making him look like a star. MJF's on top of his game. Jericho can't hang. He takes time off the heel, do his commentary on Rampage, irritate me week after week, blah, 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 whatever. At least MJF could mock Jericho and continue to be his douchebag self every week. I mean, the story writes it fucking self. But then they did the trash they did afterwards, and they completely killed it. So Paul Turner comes down. He and Aubrey shoot the shit for a minute about the foot on the ropes deal. Aubrey, I guess, takes Paul's word for it. Because God forbid they can't show a replay or anything. So they restart the match. MJF and Jericho do some false finish garbage to, try and allude to the idea that MJF could still pull out a win, but we all know it's bullshit. Fast forward, Jericho locks in the walls, MJF taps, and I farted. Darby Allen versus CM Punk, arguably the most anticipated match on the show. This is definitely a big test for Punk, though. 7 years out of the ring, his big return to action, kind of a make it or break it deal. I mean, dude was under a lot of pressure here. So, I can only imagine the butterflies he was feeling. I will say this. I was never the biggest fan of Punk's work in WWE, but I'll tell you what. After a lot of the garbage I've seen on the wrestling market in the last 10 or so years, I found a new appreciation for Punk's ring style watching this match. This should be a note to all the wrestlers on the AEW roster that want to learn how to work actual pro wrestling. Buck fucks. Sorry. Phlegm. It's kind of funny, though, because I think Punk really wanted to work heel in this match, but the fans were mostly split. But it was definitely more a 7-30 split than it was a 50-50. Understandably so. They did have the right idea, though, with having Darby work from behind most of the match while, Punk carried a lot of the action. You might make a good case Darby should have controlled more of the offense considering how long Punk's been out of action. Maybe try to play up the ring rust story a little more. I could see that, but the size discrepancy between the two is drastic enough where I think Darby playing babyface in peril was perfectly justified. But from bell to bell, the structure, the pacing, the story, the action, I thought it was pretty much laid out perfectly. Punk did take some risks. I wasn't a huge fan of the flip dive from the top rope where Darby's leg almost collided with Punk's head. A little too soon to be seeing Punk take moves like that. Just pace yourself, dude. Pace yourself. But Punk looked impressive. You can definitely tell that he put the training and the work in to get back in ring shape. 7 years is a long time to be out of the ring, but Punk was pretty smooth as silk here. And I love this stuff at the end where Darby goes for the coffin drop, but Punk just sits up and pulls a Brock Lesnar SummerSlam laugh. Dude, fuck off with your stupid finish. I'm just going to sit up. And, of course, they do a little series of false finishes, which the crowd did pop for. And see, this is the match where the multiple false finishes actually serve the purpose. Not whatever the hell those no-sell Nimrods did in that cage match earlier on. I also got a kick out of Punk going back and forth with the fans on, which tunnel to leave through. Punk's going up the ramp. He points to the heel tunnel, and the fans are all like, no, don't go through there. And he points to the face tunnel, and they all cheer. He's like, oh, okay, I got it now. So, for me, it was match of the night, no question. Obviously, Punk went over, which probably should have. And I know I spent most of the time here talking about Punk, but Allen did his part here too. So, my hats go off to both of these guys. Still not totally sold on Darby Allen's gimmick, but he's got a cult following and people love him. So, as long as he wrestles more matches like this in the future, I can get past the weird, emo, Raven-esque character qualities. Last thing I'll say on it, should have main evented. In context, I understand why they didn't do it. I still think it should have closed the show. Or at the very least, it should have semi-main evented and not come before this death slot Big Show QT Marshall match. Dude, I don't even know what to say about this White Marshall match. First off, no one cared. Second off, it sucked. And third off, well, actually, that's all I have to say about it. Big Show looks like he's packing a little bit of extra baggage in the midsection. Anyway, in the main event, Christian Cage and Kenny Omega for the AEW World title. And before I get into any specifics here, was I only half paying attention, or was the crowd really cold for a good portion of this match? Like, there were definitely moments where they got into things, but I don't know. They popped for the finish. I mean, they booed the crap out of the cue ball doofus run-in toward the end. But, I don't know, for like a good chunk of it, it just seems like everyone was kind of burnt out. I mean, justifiably so, and the show was 4 damn hours. You know, as a main event match, I'd say it was good. I think I enjoyed their Rampage match more, generally by comparison of timing and layout. Their TV match I thought had better structure than this one did. Honestly, it's kind of how I compared things with the Statlander Baker match. Like, the ring action was good, but I don't think there was any semblance of real heat during the match. A lot of it was 50-50 back and forth. Cage got a couple occasional hope spots in, but didn't feel like there was ever a real valiant babyface comeback that we're accustomed to seeing in traditional matches. It's funny, too, because the match was only 20 minutes or something? Felt like it went far longer. And, I mean, looking back, it's probably not a good thing. Again, a lot of it can be chalked up to me just being burnt out by this portion of the program, but yeah, I had a real hard time getting into this. The other thing, too, is I don't think they ever did a great job convincing me that Cage had any shot of winning the title. I mean, obviously, based on how they played things out at the end of the show, it was clear the intention was never to have Cage beat Omega for the AEW title, so I get it. Maybe the predictability thing factored into my depleted enjoyment of the match. I will say 2 things I liked here. Keeping the elite run-ins to a bare minimum and having a real good proper finish to the match. I did cringe when I saw Cage take the one-wing angel off the top rope, but they hit the spot perfectly. The fans went crazy for it. It was a well-done finish. And that's definitely one thing that you always want to make sure you get things right. The finish is the real make it or break it element when it comes to wrestling. A match can be relatively good for the majority of it, but if the finish craps, it kind of ruins the whole spectacle of the matter. As far as the afterbirth with Adam Cole, baby, and Bryan Danielson. Again, well, I thought the Punk and Darby match probably should have main evented. I can justify the placement of the match based on what they did here. I have some mixed thoughts about the execution of Cole's debut in particular, but the Danielson debut was exactly what it needed to be. The Adam Cole swerve was, less shocking than I think a lot of people are probably going to make it out to be. Obviously, I don't follow the being the elite trash, so I'm not fully aware of the whole Bucks Adam Cole mantra, but the way I see it, Adam Cole's best work is always as a heel. The backstory's there, the rationale's there, and, especially if Danielson was going to come out on the same show to send the fans home happy, Cole turning right away was fine. If Adam Cole did debut, turned heel, and then they closed the show with the villain standing over the faces, that would have been ill-advised. Kind of felt like Cole was immediately overshadowed, and I can definitely see that too. But from where we are right now, here's my summary of the whole ordeal. The elite group sucks. There's nobody in this faction that I take seriously. Everybody's just, I don't know. Nobody is a credible threat beyond any stretch of the imagination. They're a bunch of comedy goof heels. They do goofy comedy. It's not entertaining. It's not compelling. It sucks. Adam Cole has enough legitimacy where if he can control himself, he doesn't fall into the trap of being over-the-top cartoon character like the rest of these schlubs. He has some credibility in this group where maybe I can actually watch an Elite segment without either skipping ahead or hitting the mute button. We'll see. I'm not confident, but I at least have enough respect for Adam Cole that I will give him the benefit of the doubt. If anybody can make this faction be tolerable on TV every week, Cole's the guy to do it. So, general recap here. Miro Kingston was a good opener. Moxley Kojima was boring, but the Minoru Suzuki surprise was cool. Statlander and Baker was okay, but I don't know. I don't think Statlander is ready for pay-per-view yet, and Baker's still not good enough to carry the matches. It's just the way it is. She's a good promo. She's getting better, but yeah, long-term matches, she's still got a lot of work to do. That cage match can go suck a fat one. The Casino Battle Royal was essentially my piss break on the show, although the Thunder Rosa Ruby Riott exchange was good at the end. MJF and Jericho was an okay match with an initial great finish that was ultimately ruined by a stupid finish. Punk Darby was my match of the night, and I think Punk looked good in his return match. Big Show QT Marshall, bleh. The Christian Kenny World title match was very long, probably not as good as their Rampage match, but I mean, overall it was fine. And I did appreciate the limited usage of the Elite run-ins during the match. The Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson debuts were very well done. So, while I guess the way I could sum up like the last half hour of the show, I guess, while I would not consider the main event match ideal, the main event segment was a good closer to the show. Still really skeptical about Cole siding with the Bucks and Omega right now, but he's talented where, I think even if I hate most of the Elite stuff and it has go-away heat with me, Adam Cole is enough of a star that he can probably salvage some of the bullshit. If he's mature about it and he doesn't get too goofy with it. So we'll see. Overall, kind of a all over the map pay-per-view. I have not seen or heard any recaps of the show, mostly because I had to order the show and watch on a replay earlier, and I'm recording this like within an hour and a half after having watched the show. My presumption is that most people will overly praise it. They'll say every match on the show is great to fantastic. They'll prop up the cage match and say it was match of the year for 2021 and it was fantastic and blah, blah, blah. It'll all be honeymoon phase, AEW can do no wrong, propaganda's bullshit. It was a solid show with the usual AEW tropes that I always complain about. I know I'll be in the minority with my opinion on that, but hey, that's to be expected here on the 5 Starr Wrestling Report. The show that spits truth and calls out bull when it happens. It's what you can expect. With that said, that'll conclude this rather epic installment of the FSWR podcast. If you like what you saw, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, keep posted on my channel every Monday and Friday for new featured content, and take care all. I'll be back on Friday for the weekly NXT and Dynamite reports. Hope you all enjoyed.